Well, as you can see, I'm not Bishop Larry Silva. Bishop Larry Silva had really planned to be here this evening. However, we just returned from a pilgrimage to the Philippines yesterday afternoon, and this morning Bishop Larry called me and said he was feeling a bit under the weather, and he thought it prudent that he not be here this evening because he was feeling weak, and also because we don't want to infect anyone else. And so he also has to go to the Big Island this weekend for confirmation on Sunday in Papaico. So here I am. But I did want to let you know that when Bishop Larry asked me to come this evening, he told me that he would be celebrating Mass privately at this very same time in his chapel, in his residence at St. Stephen's Diocesan Center. So he is with us spiritually in prayer right now this evening. And so we certainly, on behalf of Bishop Larry, on behalf of our Catholic Church here in Hawaii, on behalf of myself, all of our brother priests, we want to say, especially to this faith community here at St. Peter and Paul, as well as the other faith communities that were mentioned that Father Khanh ministered at, that we share in your sorrow, in your grief, in your shock, really, at Father Khan's sudden passing, sudden death. And so we want you to know, a bishop wants you to know especially of our love and prayers and concern for all of you as well. Because we all share in this sadness, really. But we are people of faith. We are people of hope, and we know that Khanh is at peace, Father Khanh is at peace with the Lord. You know, in the early church, it says in the Bible that the followers of Jesus were first called Christians at Antioch. What a lot of people don't know is that before the followers of Jesus were called Christian, they were called followers of the way. That was the first name given to early Christians, followers. And the reason I mention that is because, whether you know it or not, Father Khanh was supposedly on vacation this month, but it wasn't really like Las Vegas or Acapulco or somewhere else that he was on vacation at. His vacation actually was a pilgrimage. It was a pilgrimage to Europe. There is a very famous and treasured and really old path that leads ultimately to the Church of St. James, Santiago, in Compostela, Spain. And that path to that Church of St. James is often called the Way. And Father Khanh was on that path from the first part of July on his vacation. This is a walking path. People make this pilgrimage. It's a very spiritual experience for many, many people. He was making that spiritual pilgrimage. It's a long walk, over 100 kilometers at least, to get to the church. There are different ways that people come at it, but usually over 100 kilometers must be transpired before you make it to the church. And for all that we know, Father Khanh did complete the Santiago de Compostela. That's what we understood. And then the plan was for him to go back home to his family in New Mexico for a little while before he would come back here. And sadly, when he got back home in New Mexico, it was found out that he was very, very ill. I suspect Father Khanh may have known more than we knew about his condition, although we don't know. But in any case, he was on the way. And all of us, really, are on the way. Because we are on the way, ultimately, all of us, to God. We are all pilgrims. We have here in this life no lasting city. And things like Father Khan's death remind us of that, really, that we are all on this way, ultimately, to be with the Lord. And as we travel this path of life, as we travel this way, and as we think of Father Khan's life, we can be reminded of some very important things for all of us. In the first reading, it speaks about how we should love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, and strength. We believe that Father Khanh did that. And then it says that we ought to impart this message to our children. You know, I got this title, Monsignor, about 10 years ago. It's a nice title, you know. You don't get more money, you get more work. But anyway, actually, in many respects, I prefer really what I've been called for 30-something years before that, Father. Father Khanh. You know, father is a relational term. If somebody is called your father, well, that's a nice honorary title, right? But it also implies certain things. If you're called father, if you're called someone's father, if someone calls you father, they are saying that they have a relationship with you. Not only are they you're going to respect that father, but that father, the priest, has an obligation because he's your father. And Father Khanh fulfilled that obligation so wonderfully by being a father to so many, by sharing life, the life of God, with so many. You know, it's not just people who have biological children who give life. It's also people like Father Khanh who have given so much life to so many. And so we think of that and we honor that and we pray that we can also be that kind of life-giving person that Father Khanh was. That's what the second reading speaks of, really. In Paul's letter to Timothy, he says that he's being poured out as a libation. Now, you know, libations are what you have at celebrations. Libations are things that bring you joy and happiness. And in his quiet but serene and firm way, Father Khanh did that for so many. And then in the gospel today, Jesus says something very interesting. In another place in the scriptures, in the gospels, Jesus said, come aside and rest a while. I thought, funnily, that if I was ever appointed a bishop, I'd use that as my Episcopal motto. Come aside and rest a while. But Jesus said something very interesting in the gospel today. He said, come, I'm going to help give you rest. And then he said, take my yoke upon your shoulders. So I'm going to give you rest, but there's going to be a burden. There's going to be a burden. And you know, Father Khanh very graciously bared the burden of priesthood and bared the burden of being a pastor as well. After his initial time at St. John Vianney, he was the pastor, I believe, at St. Stephen's and Blessed Sacrament when they were together. A combined situation, 2 parishes, 1 pastor. It's not very much done now, and because Bishop Larry realized that it's an extra burden for the pastor to be in 2 places with 2 different people. And also, it's a burden for the people to not feel that they have their own priest. And so that situation of clustering was changed almost universally throughout the diocese with 1 or 2 exceptions. But Father Khanh bore that burden very well, especially at St. Stephen's, where there was a lot of things that needed to be repaired and enhanced in the church. And it wasn't easy, it wasn't inexpensive. But Father Khanh bore that burden. And then he came here to this church, St. Peter and Paul. And another burden came. It was the burden of not enough space, right? And Father Khanh, with great faith and trust in God, believed that the parish needed to step out in faith and extend itself seriously, financially, to purchase a whole other building and property behind this church so that the church could flourish, so that the people could be well taken care of. And he, in faith, stepped out as the parish leader, as the pastor, and agreed to that. And he bore that burden with much grace. And in the end, that burden of the finances was lifted. Almost like a miracle, as many, I think you all know as parishioners, a very generous benefactor has completely wiped out your parish debt. There's no debt. Yeah. So it's a testament to Father Khan's faith that he believed that the debt would be taken care of, and God took care of the debt, and someone else who was very generous in their will. So these are the kind of things that we remember and honor in Father Khanh. And even though God gives us all, the harness to bear the burden, to pull the load, if we take on that burden with the kind of faith and trust in God that Father Khanh had, then the burden will still be the burden, but it will seem much lighter. And now, we believe that God has given to Father Khanh the reward of his goodness, the reward of his faith, the reward of his faithfulness to God and to his priesthood till the end. And we thank God for his ministry here in our diocese and for his presence among us.